Welcome everyone to Dead Talk Live. I'm your host Viz, and I want to welcome all of our viewers from around the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you are tuning in for the first time and want more information about our show, please visit us on the web at deadtalklive.com. You'll find all our featured episodes, our four most recent episodes, our upcoming guest list, and much, much more. And let me take this opportunity to welcome some of our viewers. We have Singer Chick with us on YouTube. Sammy and Philip are with us on Facebook. Khaleesi is also with us. Saz, Khaleesi, and Singer are going to be moderating on YouTube. And of course, Marie is moderating on Instagram. Let me say hello to Tianda on Instagram. Stray, Drika is also with us. Shah wants to know, what is this? This is a horror talk show live stream. So I hope that answers your question. Shiri is also with us and waving. F. Richards is also with us on YouTube. So welcome everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying their Tuesday evening. Ballots are being counted in Georgia. It is butt freezing cold outside. Well, it is January, so for all of you guys who have not visited us on YouTube yet, please go ahead and do so. The name of our channel is called Dead Talk Live. Go ahead and check it out. And if you like what you see, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you're watching this broadcast right now on YouTube, it'd be greatly appreciated if you guys hit the thumbs up button on this broadcast. So, Sania says, wants me to say hello. So hello, Sania. There's your shout out. And welcome to our show. Sania is on Instagram. Drukasmanka, I think I pronounced that correct, is saying hello all the way from Brazil. City Star is also giving us a thumbs up on Instagram. Yes, like I said, we have viewers from all around the world. I'm on the East Coast of the United States. We have viewers pretty much on every continent except Antarctica. I don't think anybody's watching us in Antarctica. All the way to Asia and around the globe. So welcome to everybody. Let's see. I'm just looking at your chats. Ayub is asking, how am I? I'm doing good. Colette is also saying hello to everyone on Facebook. Welcome to everyone. We got a nice sized crowd tonight for a Tuesday evening. So let's go ahead and get started. See what's going on in the world of headlines. I'm a little reluctant to call them news. These are opinion pieces. But as we talked about the other day, in the movies that are coming out in 2021, I mentioned that A Quiet Place 2, the Netflix original, is a sequel, is being released in this year on Netflix. And this article says how A Quiet Place 2 can avoid a common horror movie sequel mistake. Now, we've all seen sequels, and the majority of the time, the sequel is not as good as the original. Can you guys think of like the biggest reason why sequels never really, match up to the original in terms of quality? Anyway, let's see what they have to say. A Quiet Place 2 takes place directly after the events of the original movie, which could result in a major sequel mistake common to horror movies. And I just cannot wait to hear what this common mistake is. With the upcoming release of A Quiet Place 2, there are several common horror movie sequel mistakes it can avoid in order to be a successful addition to the ever-growing series. Now that there are talks of a third installment buzzing around, the second hasn't even come out yet, it's crucial that the sequel doesn't fall into the same traps as other sequels have in the past. Here's how A Quiet Place 2 can avoid becoming another horror movie sequel that causes the franchise to suffer as a result. All right, here we go. John Krasinski's A Quiet Place astounded audiences when it utilized a lack of sound as its way of invoking fear. And you got to give him credit for that. How many times have you watched a movie where there's very little dialogue, very little outside sound, but is still scary as hell? And A Quiet Place, the original, pulled it off beautifully. While a family is forced to live in utter silence with the fear of the one wrong move could kill them all, they use American Sign Language to communicate. It was one of the most brilliant usages of the language, as well as a unique way to represent the deaf community in horror, and we've also seen that in the last two seasons on The Walking Dead, for example, with the introduction of Connie and Kelly. The characters, Connie is deaf, Kelly is losing her hearing on the show, and it was great how they implemented both that into the characters and how the use of American Sign Language was brought onto the set of The Walking Dead, and it was embraced by all the cast members, and they're all, learning American Sign Language, which I think is awesome. Like I said, it's a cochlear implant, even has a key role of saving the entire family from the hordes of alien monsters roaming a post-apocalyptic Earth. A Quiet Place stars John Krasinski, sorry about that, John, as Lee Abbott and Emily Blunt, his wife in real life and in the movie. As Evelyn Abbott, who is pregnant for the majority of the movie, their children, Reagan and Marcus, are trying their best to survive following the horrific death of their youngest brother, Bo. And that was a heartbreaking scene. If you guys remember it in the beginning, for those of you that have seen A Quiet Place, in the beginning of the movie, that little brother goes back for his toy. The toy starts making noise, even though they told him not to put batteries in it. He did put batteries in it. And as soon as that little toy started making that noise, the alien came out of nowhere at like super lightning speed and snatched him up. That's how scary these creatures are in A Quiet Place. Due to the fact that A Quiet Place 2 takes place directly after the events of the first movie, it may run into an issue of how they will make the creatures scarier now that the Abbott family knows how to defeat them. However, making them stronger to compensate would be a mistake. It isn't typical that something like an alien life form can become more powerful within a few days or weeks. By doing this, A Quiet Place 2 runs the risk of becoming a franchise that needs to make continually stronger, more powerful creatures rather than delving into their origins or how the current ones adapt and change over time in a logical way. Now that makes perfect sense. This mistake has been made by countless horror sequels before, so it's an important lesson to learn. Typically, sequels will latch onto their most gripping aspect. For example, Michael Myers in Halloween appeared to be an average serial killer who was human and could be killed normally. By the time Halloween 2 premiered, it seemed like Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode could successfully defeat Michael like any human assailant, but the franchise had other plans for Michael. He was the boogeyman. While some changes were more gradual than others, most additions to the Halloween franchise transformed him into a supernatural being who can withstand numerous gunshots, full-body burns, and explosions. If A Quiet Place 2 chooses to go in the direction of making more powerful creatures, it can't be too hasty. And to approach the whole, the Michael Myers thing, yeah, he is kind of hard to kill. And they tried to explain that in the fifth movie. I don't know how many of you guys remember Halloween 5, when it's revealed that, during his time in Smith Grove, in the sanitarium, he was sort of made super natural by the doctor who's an occult leader, by the symbol, the tattoo that he had on his wrist. They really, I don't know, they kind of went off in a really weird tangent with that one. But luckily, the Halloween movies, the movies that have followed the original, are so fragmented. Some have chosen to follow the original movie, others have chosen to go a different path. With the latest franchise releases, starting with Halloween 2018, and then Halloween Kills, which is coming out in October, and Halloween Ends, that's coming out next year. They are basically telling us, rightfully so, to forget every Halloween movie that came out after the original, and Halloween 2018 should be considered the sequel to the original Halloween. Forget about everything else. The Rob Zombie Halloweens, the original Halloween 2, all of that. Just get it out of your mind. Never happened, didn't exist. There are several other ways that the movie could go about making the monsters seem more powerful or unique. In Netflix's Stranger Things, each season takes place approximately a year apart from another, but they are almost always reveal the next evil is laying dormant. They're talking about in the season finale, they always let you know that there is still something out there that is a threat to them. The Demogorgon didn't spawn Demodogs overnight, or vice versa, nor did the Mind Flayer come from them. Rather than forcing their monsters to change rapidly, they offered a variation, which is exactly what A Quiet Place 2 could do as well. It'd be fairly simple to add a brief origin story for the creatures and the possibility that they breed. Well, I mean, shut up, Siri. They obviously breed. I mean, if they didn't breed, they would have become extinct well long ago, before they even reached Earth. There might also be variations in things like climate could impact which extraterrestrials inhabit certain portions of the globe. And actually, that's a straight ripoff from War of the Worlds. If you guys know the story of War of the Worlds, have seen the movie, whether, it's the Tom Cruise one or any of the other movies of War of the Worlds, you saw that the ultimate defeat of the aliens, in this case Martians, was that after arriving at Earth, the bacteria, the viruses that we as humans are immune to, the aliens were not. And that was their ultimate downfall. It wasn't the humans that defeated the Martians. It was the planet. They were not immune to the bacteria and the viruses that were on planet Earth, which ultimately led to their defeat in Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. So let's see what you guys are saying. CC Weezy, who's with us on YouTube, said, taught Michael Myers how to drive. Yep, that was the doctor. That's how they explained that. That the doctor who was the cult leader in the Halloween movies, he's the one that taught Michael Myers how to drive, and how he just drove off in the original Halloween in the beginning of the movie. Colette on Facebook writes, love Stranger Things. So do I. I love Stranger Things. At the end of each season, I'm like, well, how can they continue this and make another good season? But so far, I have not been let down. They have surprised me with every new season. There is another one coming out, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see which direction they take it. It's become a huge franchise, and I don't think there's been a bad season yet. So hopefully they can keep that up. Let's see. Colette also writes, saw Hopper at Comic Con. Hopper from Stranger Things. That's awesome. Mandy, Enid Grimes. Yes, we remember you, Mandy. Welcome on YouTube. Let's see. Khaleesi writes that the fourth season is going to be the last one. Okay, did not hear that, but I totally trust you. So, just be a little weary if the fourth, if this final season of Stranger Things is extremely successful. And we all know that Netflix does not release numbers on viewership. The only way you know if a show has been successful on Netflix is if they bring it back. If they keep bringing it back, that means it has a lot of viewers. But you're never going to get viewership numbers from Netflix. And obviously, Stranger Things is a huge franchise. So, anyway, let's finish off this article. In regard to extraterrestrials and monsters, the options are seemingly endless for horror movies, but they have to be attentive. They have to be attentive to which direction they choose to avoid muddling the narrative. Most sequels aren't considered as good as the original. If A Quiet Place 2 goes in the direction of making their creatures stronger over the course of a few weeks without explanation, it's possible a promising franchise could falter simply by not learning from past sequel mistakes. I don't think that's how they're going to do it, because it is kind of silly that, these creatures become stronger, but you got to leave open the possibility that obviously they're very intelligent. They've traveled from one planet to another, and obviously they have the ability to learn and adapt. So that's very possible, and that would not be out of the realm. Khaleesi writes that she has 6 t-shirts of Stranger Things. That's pretty cool. Let's see. Queen is with us on Instagram, saying, are you following Proto? Don't know what Proto is. Sherry is with us from Australia, Newcastle, Australia. Welcome to Sherry from Newcastle, Australia. And welcome to all of our new viewers on Instagram who have just joined. So let's move on to the next thing. This one discusses the best decade for horror movies. 2000s versus the 2010s. Now that both decades are completely done, what's your guys' take? Did the better horror movies come out at the turn of this century, or was it a decade later, starting in 2010? For me, I think this industry, this genre, took a turn for the better in the late 2000s, into 2010. And it's carried on ever since. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think that the horror genre is right now the most popular genre in the movie entertainment business. It is booming. Other genres are struggling. You would think in the world that we're living in the middle of a pandemic, and just how reality is a lot scarier than some of the fiction that we see on the screen, that people would be turning away from horror. It's actually the complete opposite. People are turning towards horror. I've loved it since I was 5 years old, so I can't really offer an explanation as to why now it's becoming more popular. It's always been popular, but I would say, guys, over the last decade or so, it has really, really taken off. So it goes on to say that the horror genre has undergone a massive renaissance in the 21st century, but which is the best decade for horror? The 2000s or the 2010s? The horror genre has undergone that major renaissance. Every decade has its share of horror highlights. By the way, I love this picture of the Nun and the Ring photoshopped together. That demon from the Conjuring movies, the spinoff, the Nun, that's a scary ass demon. I mean, you know, put a demon in a nun's outfit, for me, that freaks me out. It totally freaks me out. And I love the movie. I love the movie of the story of that nun. Uh, I don't know how many of you guys are Conjuring fans, how many of you have seen all the spin offs that have been created from the Conjuring universe, Annabelle, and of course the nun. And it's created a very successful franchise, and they could continue going in so many different directions. Lindsay writes, I saw a movie called 30 Days of Night. I saw that too. It scared the crap out of me, but I can't remember what year it came out. I think that was in the 2000s. 30 Days of Night. Uh, it, I had totally forgotten about that movie. It takes place somewhere in like northern Alaska where they don't see the sun in the wintertime for like a good straight 30 days. And this weird, if I'm remembering correctly, this weird uh, plague that turns people into these kind of creatures takes over, and they have to survive until the sun reappears again, which is a full month away. Khaleesi writes that it came out in 2007. So there's your answer, Lindsay. 2007. Lindsay says it's a vampire movie. Yep, it turns them into vampires. And, vampires don't like sunlight. So continuing on, beginning way back in the silent era of the 20s, with chillers like Nosferatu and Phantom of the Opera, carrying through to the classic Universal monsters of the 30s and 40s. The 50s brought nuclear warfare-inspired creatures because we were in the middle of the Cold War. The 90s were mostly a transitional period, which despite the introduction of M. Night Shyamalan and a Best Picture win for Silence of the Lambs, mostly offered middling slasher movies capitalizing on the subgenre boom in the 80s. And the first major found footage film, The Blair Witch Project, which we just discussed the other day in our found footage episode on how the Blair Witch Project created a whole new subgenre of horror films called found footage films. And there have been some great found footage films that have come out. Of course, in the 90s, we also have Freddy in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. In the 80s as well, Hellraiser by Clive Barker. The 21st century introduced a new peak for horror movies with major box office hits and amateur-driven works collectively pushing the genre into a new golden age, which is better overall, the 2000s or the 2010. The choice is quite honestly quite simple. The 2000s had plenty of high points, from the subterranean terror of The Descent to the eerie twist on the vampire mythos that is Let the Right One In. Sam Raimi returned to his Evil Dead roots with Drag Me to Hell, and Danny Boyle and Alex Garland made Fast Zombies mainstream. Fast Zombies, what I call Rage Zombies, is a much better term for them, in 28 Days Later. By and large, the decade was defined by a post 9/11 anxiety that exposed the ugliest tendencies of the genre. The macabre gave way to mean-spirited in the Saw franchise and in Hostel, Eli Roth's nauseatingly grotesque exercise in torture porn. that's a perfect. That sentence sums it up perfectly. I love Hostel. Eli Roth. I mean, that was just genius. Him coming up with it. But check this out: nauseatingly grotesque exercise in quote unquote torture porn. Never thought of Hostel that way, but I think that's pretty appropriate. Americans became more and more terrified of violent outsiders invading their sacred living spaces. Therefore, it made sense for the genre to reflect the paranoia Americans were feeling in a decade which began with the largest terrorist attack in the United States. However, the nihilism of movie like The Strangers somehow crossed the boundaries of horror into sadism. Elsewhere, American remakes of Japanese horror movies like The Ring paled in comparison to their original versions, and the found footage gimmick of the Blair Witch Project spiraled out of control with the shaky cam histrionics of Cloverfield and direct to bargain bin ripoffs like Quarantine. I liked Quarantine. How many of you guys saw Quarantine? With Jennifer Carpenter in it. Jennifer Carpenter, if you guys don't know who Jennifer Carpenter is, she played Emily Rose in The Possession of Emily Rose. Jennifer Carpenter has been in a lot of horror movies. She's a great actress. And, one of her earlier movies is Quarantine. It's about a documentary crew that is following around a firehouse and the firemen. And they get called to a building for some kind of call. And the next thing you know, that building is being completely sealed off from the outside. It's because the residents of that building are infected and they're turning into zombies. And they managed to isolate it to that one building, as far as we know. There have been sequels to Quarantine, but, as we've been discussing, the original is the best one by far. So if you're looking for a scary movie that you have not seen yet, that is just downright scary in the way the government quarantines off a residential building full of residents that are becoming sick and turning into zombies, and how the government is not playing around with anybody that tries to leave that building, go ahead and check out Quarantine. It's a damn scary movie. I highly recommend it. Compare all that to the 2010s, which practically exploded with horror offerings in both mainstream and art house cinemas. Filmmakers of all types left strong directional stamps that chilled audience to the bone while also displaying immense craft. These films spawned the term elevated horror, a phrase mostly derived as a nonsensical dismissal of great works of horror cinema from before. Even so, it's easily applicable to a decade which gave us Get Out, Jordan Peele's genre-binding phenomena, whose biggest monster was complacency in the face of racism, The Babadook, Jennifer Kent's nightmarish exploration of grief, and The Witch, Robert Eggers' spooky New England folktale, which would not have looked out of place in the best cinematography lineup. Those are three very good movies. That's not even mentioning the emergence of director Ari Aster, who followed up his terrifying masterpiece Hereditary with the best breakup movie since Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Midsommar. And Hereditary, another great movie. I don't know how to sum it up in a sentence or two, but it is a paranormal movie, or how some of these people like to call them supernatural movies. It was a sleeper hit. So, again, if you're looking for stuff to watch and you have not watched Hereditary yet, definitely check it out. For those who shrug off those offerings as artsy critical darlings with no scares, look no further than James Wan's 1-2 punch of Insidious and The Conjuring. Now, just to have those two great movies under your belt, you got to give James Wan some props, all right? The Insidious franchise is awesome, and you all know how I feel about the Conjuring franchise. I absolutely love it. Massive box office success stories, which also happen to be two of the most jump scare heavy movies of the past decade. When given the choice between the 2000s and the 2010s as the best decade for horror, the answer is simple. While films from the 2000s reflected the anxieties and paranoias of all time, the mean-spiritedness on display was more sadistic than spooky. The 2010s ushered in the release of a slate of instant classics and debuts from ambitious new filmmakers who explored big ideas while still giving audiences a whole new batch of nightmare fodder. While with smart style and good old-fashioned scares, 2010 represented the best decade of horror and the best that the genre has to offer. And, comparatively speaking, I agree. The last decade has been amazing in regards to horror, and I think it's going to continue to get better. People, these producers, these directors, filmmakers are coming up with new ways to take old stories and not stick to the cliche and expand on them, make them more creative, and give us a lot more material that we have never even thought of before. So it's only going to continue to get better. Welcome Anissa on Instagram. Just reading over the chats here. CC Weezy brings up Antebellum. Antebellum is on my watch list. I've heard a lot of great stuff about it. I have not watched it yet. Jason, who's with us on YouTube, writes, talking of torture porn, you have to include I Spit on Your Grave. It's sequels after a remake. I've not seen that either. CC Weezy writes, it came out last year with Janelle Monáe. So I will definitely check those out. So anyway, let's check the time. This is kind of sad, but Samantha Morton, who we all know as Alpha from The Walking Dead, was rushed to the hospital. Apparently, she came down with COVID in the United Kingdom. Samantha Morton was rushed to the hospital last night for treatment. The Walking Dead actress, she's only 43, was taken to the red zone at the Conquest Hospital in Hastings, East Sussex, where suspected coronavirus patients are quarantined. So we pray for a speedy recovery to Samantha Morton, and, hopefully she gets through this without any complications. She took to Twitter late last night to thank staff for helping her in her hour of need. Thank you to all the A and E staff at Conquest who helped me tonight, she tweeted. I'm so grateful for our NHS to see the red zone firsthand, and the nurses and doctors being so kind and wonderful to us was humbling. I'm okay tonight because of them. So like I said, we wish her a very speedy recovery and that there are no further complications. Samantha Morton is a brilliant actress, and a lot of us know her, like I said, as Alpha, who was killed by Negan on The Walking Dead. So, things are getting bad with COVID all over the world. And, the United Kingdom is being hit particularly hard recently. So, everybody out there, please stay safe. And, we'll get through this. We will get through this. Colette writes, it's bad COVID. Everyone is in a lockdown. Colette also says nearly 80,000 deaths. Wow. I mean, what can you say? I mean, that's just crazy. Let's see, what should we do next? Does The Walking Dead need villains? What do you guys think? I don't know why they chose black on black, well, gray over a dark picture, but if you look at it, you can see the title right here. Does The Walking Dead need villains? What do you guys think? You think that the walkers are enough? Or, it would not be the same without the human psychos that we have seen throughout the years on The Walking Dead. Villains are a huge part of the Walking Dead universe, but are they necessary? Yes. Simple question, simple answer. Yeah, they are. A funny thing happened a few days ago after my article on the worst Walking Dead deaths of 2020. Someone said how the death of a villain, be it good or bad, was essentially irrelevant because people don't watch the shows for the villains, but the heroes. I disagree with that completely. I don't know how you guys feel, but I watch, The Walking Dead and other shows for both the villains that you love to hate and the heroes. And, at the end of the day, yeah, we want to see the villains defeated, most of us, and the good guys come out on top. But what would it be like without any antagonists on not just The Walking Dead, but other shows that are very similar to The Walking Dead? They said that the audience needs people to root for, and they need the villains to die. I won't argue the second and the third points. Hell, I don't even think I can argue them because if you don't care about the characters in a show, why would you watch it? Any drama needs someone the audience cares about. Without such a character, it is dead in the water. But the first point, I'm not sure about that. I mean, yes, we do watch shows for the heroes rather than the villains, but without conflict, things become stagnant, and for a TV show, that's death. That's absolutely correct. I will be the first to say that The Walking Dead, to say nothing of its sister series, doesn't necessarily need a villain that Rick's group / the communities defeat at the end of a season, because in the first season, there wasn't anyone. You could argue that Ed or Merle was. I even used them as two of my most irredeemable villains list for that first season, but neither of them posed any real threat to Rick or the group at large. So to say that they were the villains would be a bit of a stretch. Ed was not a villain. Ed was just a douche. He was a wife beater. He was an abuser. Nobody cried over his death. Shane, at the second half of season 2, you could say quite confidently was our first look into an antagonist on The Walking Dead. Somebody who was directly opposed to and wanted Rick Grimes dead. However, to say that the villains are essentially irrelevant, that's just as much of a stretch. And there you have the worst villain of them all, right there with the eye patch, the governor. There has been no greater evil man in the Walking Dead universe, and I don't think we're going to see a greater evil person on The Walking Dead than the governor. Good old Philip Blake, played brilliantly by David Morrissey. If you want a good idea of just how important a villain can be to The Walking Dead, look back at the seasons 3 and 4, both of which centered largely on Rick's group's war with the governor. The governor was a constant looming presence throughout season 3 and the first half of season 4, and those actions were the central jumping off point for the actions of Rick's group as well as their character development throughout the latter half of that season. Even in season 2 of the show, while much slower paced than the succeeding 2 seasons, the drama was primarily driven by Shane's descent into madness and the growing conflict between him and Rick, which came to a head in that season's penultimate episode where Rick killed Shane because Shane was going to kill Rick. And Rick used his head, as we've seen him do throughout his time on The Walking Dead. We've said this before, Rick was never the better fighter, especially one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. If it was one-to-one, hand-on-hand combat, I have no doubt that Shane would beat the living crap out of Rick and would ultimately kill him, but Rick is smarter. Rick is smarter than the majority of the antagonists he's come up against. You can argue some exceptions there. Negan was equally as smart. The governor was just too emotional. He just reacted on his instincts, but Rick was very smart. And that's how Rick was able to survive as long as he has, and he is still very much alive. CC Weezy writes, the governor was pure evil. They toned him down on the show. In the comics, the things he did to Michonne and Rick were brutal. Colette on Facebook writes, I think Shane and Rick had issues before it started. Well, if they did have issues before the apocalypse started, they did not really shed any light on it on the show. Remember when in the show's pilot, there were 2 best friends sitting in that squad car together eating burgers and fries just before Rick got shot. You know, Rick was sharing the troubles he was having with Lori, and Shane was supporting him on how to make things work between Rick and his wife. If those seasons, for whatever reason, did not have Shane or the governor or anyone else to serve as antagonists, the show would have gotten very boring, assuming it even made it into a 3rd season, because there would have been no one to instigate conflict for Rick or the group. There would still be the walkers, characters be oblivious to the fact that they were dead, the way Herschel was in season 2, could not go on forever. The same can be said for just randomly running into herds. I mean, it makes absolutely sense. Can you guys imagine how boring like The Walking Dead would be if it was just about the survivors against the zombies and the people unrealistically all work together, which we know is complete crap. The way it's being depicted on The Walking Dead is a lot closer to what I think would happen if civilization were to fall apart. Yeah, whatever caused civilization to fall apart would be a big problem, but then you have to deal with everyone out for themselves. And that's what happens when everything falls apart. Everyone is out for themselves. And I think that is the big center, and it's been the running theme of The Walking Dead and its sister series for well over 10 years now. The zombies are not the biggest threat. It's the survivors. They are the biggest threats. I said this before, and I'll say it again. A post-apocalyptic world is a psychopath's playground where there is no law or order. They can do whatever the hell they want. So if you want an idea of what The Walking Dead would look like without a villain, I think the closest we can get to beyond season 1, which is different animal because it's the introductory nature, is season 5 of Fear the Walking Dead. And that's correct. A lot of people did not like season 5 of The Walking Dead. You know, the survivors were all about saving people. Yeah, the biggest antagonist was Logan, but come on. I mean, Logan, they could have easily taken Logan out anytime they wanted. And the same thing could have been said for Logan. He could have taken a bunch of them out whenever he wanted. It was not in their nature. He was not a bad person at the core. He was seduced by Virginia into securing the oil fields. We don't find out till towards the end of season 5 when he fails to deliver and Virginia takes him out. That's how we get to meet Virginia on Fear the Walking Dead. But yeah, I would say season 5 of Fear the Walking Dead would be a very good comparison of what the Walking Dead universe would look like if you did not have any antagonists and you made the only obstacle that the survivors had to come up against were the zombies. It would be very, very boring. Anyway, in the 13 minutes or so we have left, I want us to, today we're going to talk about, we're going to be comparing the White Walkers on Game of Thrones. I don't know how many Game of Thrones fans we have here watching tonight. I love Game of Thrones. Talk about twisted and sadistic and bloody all in one. And we're going to be comparing the White Walkers from Game of Thrones to the Walkers on The Walking Dead. Two different types of walkers. And I've even brought up an article, I don't know if we're going to have time to get to it, on how a lot of fans accused The Walking Dead of stealing the term walkers from Game of Thrones. Now, obviously The Walking Dead source material is the comic books. Game of Thrones also were books before it came to HBO. I don't know which comic/book came out first with the term walker. But anyway, I put together a little collection, about a 5-minute video. First, we're going to see the progression of the Walking Dead walkers from season 1 to the present day. And then we're going to see the White Walkers on Game of Thrones. I don't want to run out of time before showing you guys this video. So let me go ahead and bring that up. Okay, so here it is. And it should, of course, these videos always get stuck. Let's go ahead and watch. So this is The Walking Dead from season 1 and the progression of the walkers. That's Jenny. That's Morgan's wife. We all remember Jenny, who Morgan could not put down, ultimately led to her taking out Dwayne, Morgan's son. Her son, too. This is season 2 now. The beginning of season 2. Michonne's pets. So, mindless, flesh-eating creatures. This was the Noah scene. Slow, crawling, not rage zombies. Not in any way. But they can gang up on you. That's where their true power is.
Third way.
This is in front of the sanctuary, obviously. where Negan had them on display. This is when Daryl rammed in the sanctuary and started letting the walkers in. And this is season 9. Remember the opening of season 9 when they venture into Washington to go to the Smithsonian to get the stuff out of the museum? And now we have the White Walkers. Here it is, guys, Game of Thrones. With their piercing blue eyes, intelligent, they think. Directly opposite of the Walking Dead world. And they're all led by the Night King. And this is how they reproduce. That's the Night King. He touches a baby, a person, and can turn him into a White Walker. And this is a scary-ass scene. He just resurrects all the dead around him and turns them into White Walkers. This scene freaked me out when I first watched it. A battle just ended. Watch this. There they go. How many of you guys remember this? CC Weezy writes, love that scene. There we have Bran. That lead walker, the Night King, man. You want to talk about vicious. We also got zombie dragons. Of course, this is Game of Thrones. I love the look on Daenerys' face after blasting with fire. And he just walks away from her. Not a scratch on her. And that look on her face. He just walks right out of it. Nothing, no harm. And that look on her face right here. Right there. And the ultimate defeat. That's our little hero right there. Arya Stark. Okay, you got to give props to Arya Stark. Another huge difference between the White Walkers and the Walkers on The Walking Dead is that in Game of Thrones, all you have to do is kill the lead walker, the Night King, whatever the hell you want to call him. You kill him, you take them all out. Now, can you imagine if The Walking Dead had a similar premise? Let's say if it was Patient Zero, okay, the first ever walker that got infected, where all the survivors had to do is find out who that is, and if you destroy that first walker, all the other walkers would just die. I mean, they would be dead, not coming back. And let's go back to the article that I had. Let's see. So here we go. Viewers are accusing The Walking Dead of ripping off Game of Thrones with White Walkers. Heads up, spoilers, in tonight's the finale, blah, 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 just getting through the fluff. We will say visually the last episode is nothing like you've ever seen on The Walking Dead. Rita says, do you think the frozen walkers on The Walking Dead were a blatant ripoff? So they're talking about the end of season 9 during that bad storm where we got to see snow in The Walking Dead universe for the first time. And them are, fans accusing The Walking Dead of basically ripping off the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. In the latest episode, this is from a podcast, It says the walkers from The Walking Dead look like white walkers from the Game of Thrones? Question mark. And here is the one of the tweets that has the Night King basically saying in a little meme, "Come at me, bro." And here's another tweet. Is The Walking Dead having a Game of Thrones crossover? So it goes on and on with these different tweets. Personally, no. Okay? I do not think that The Walking Dead ripped off Game of Thrones, especially in that season 9 uh, episode before the finale and the finale itself, in that storm with the walkers. In fact, it was a long time coming that we actually got to see snow in the Walking Dead universe. And I loved how they portrayed how some of the walkers in the Walking Dead universe, some of them were buried under the snow, some of them became popsicle sticks, frozen, and on and on and on, as opposed to the Game of Thrones and the White Walkers, who were created. If you guys remember the creation of the White Walkers on Game of Thrones, they were created as an army that to keep away man coming up north and defeating the inhabitants of the north. It started out, they created the lead Night King, the lead walker, and he created a whole army after him. That's why he was the key to defeating all the White Walkers on Game of Thrones. Singer Chick writes, "Nope, there were two totally different things." Khaleesi writes, "Valerian steel and dragon glass could kill them." One, dragon glass, Valerian steel in Game of Thrones could take out a White Walker. Nothing else is effective. Now, you use the dragon glass or Valerian steel on the Night King, which is what Arya did in the Battle of Winterfell, then you take them all out, which she did end up doing and was the hero. Lindsay writes, "I agree with you, Viz, because the walkers on The Walking Dead are mindless. Game of Thrones, they are not. They are intelligent. They think for themselves. Hell, they organize for themselves. You could argue that they think and do whatever the Night King wants them to do, and you're absolutely correct, but that's something that we have never seen on The Walking Dead." Anyway, guys, the time is up for tonight. You guys have been awesome as always. Please check out our website, deadtalklive.com. Visit us on any of our 5 streaming channels: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter. We simultaneously stream live to all 5 networks, and then our episodes get permanently archived on all those 5 separate networks. You guys are awesome as always. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow night. Stay safe, and until tomorrow night, guys, stay walking. Good night.